guys, so today I just want to talk really briefly about the primary care pharmacy education pathway. Hello, if you're new here, my name is Osama. I'm a pharmacist working in England and I'm glad you could join me on this video. So the primary care education pathway is an 18-month course that is designed to get pharmacists acclimatized to working from, like, say, the community sector and going into primary care, sort of like GP surgeries and whatnot. So the primary care pharmacy education pathway is actually an 18-month course and is divided into 5 different modules, and these modules look into different aspects of primary care work. So the expectation is you work your way through the modules over the 18 months, and then at the end of that you then go on to do your independent prescribing education, your qualifications. So that's another 6 months. So in total you're talking, it's a 2-year course from start to finish. So module 1, basically, if I can describe it, it's sort of like all the primary care essentials. It's sort of like a crash course in primary care and what primary care is and what's involved and how pharmacy fits in it. So it's fairly useful. Module 2, from what I can ascertain, this is more to do with case studies and application of the sort of training that we've learned into real life scenarios. So again, it is quite useful because that's what we're facing in the job. We're facing these clinical scenarios, and how do we problem solve? This is what it's all about. Module 3 is clinical assessment skills. So this reminds me of the clinical assessment sort of modules that we did in my independent prescribing. So it sounds pretty self-explanatory. I've not had a look into too much detail, but I'll look forward to it when I get to it. So module 4 is leadership and management. Again, I've not looked too much into this, but it sounds pretty self-explanatory. Again, it's just building on the foundations of primary care working. And module 5 is sort of an additional sort of module where you can tailor the learning to suit your needs. So I know a lot of people coming from community to primary care are absolutely clueless about biochemistry, and that includes me, and I've been trying to upskill myself in that area. And one of the additional topics that you can study in module 5 is a sub-module in biochemistry, and I think that's proved to be quite popular within us primary care pharmacists. So really, before this pathway came along, there wasn't really any formal sort of training or training post or training route to go from, say, community pharmacy into primary care. You sort of just learnt on the job, or there was certain CPP courses that you could do, sort of specialising in primary care, but nothing sort of on this scale or this sort of formal level. So it's quite good actually, because without it, I think it'd be, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it'd be a bit of a struggle just going straight from community and straight into primary care without any sort of formal training. So I'm in cohort 10, which started in May. Luckily, because I started my new role as a primary care pharmacist in March, I was able to get a bit of a head start and get quite a bit of the work done. But needless to say, I've just about finished module 1. That's sort of like the introduction to primary care, and I have found it quite useful, to be honest with you. It's quite dense in places, but I think it's almost like a crash course going from community pharmacy into primary care. It does help you, and I think it's like sort of anything else, you sort of pick up the pieces that you think are going to be more relevant to your role. So you probably don't need to go into the nitty-gritty, into every single little detail and things like that, but overall it is quite useful. So I think one of the main challenges in relation to this course is the usual suspect, and that is time. In my PCN, I'm quite lucky because every Wednesday is sort of like a training day that we get, so I can sort of dedicate almost the full day, or maybe even just half a day, to studying this pathway course. I know in other PCNs they're not quite as lucky. They have to sort of do it in their own time, or they can sort of book off a study day, because I think you are entitled to 28 days minimum study leave to do this course. So yeah, time can be a bit of an issue. because it is quite dense. But I think it's just unfortunately one of these things. I think they probably could do with trimming it down in places. You probably don't need to sort of go into as much detail with everything, but yeah, time is definitely a factor that can hinder your progress through the course. The other thing to note is that as part of the course, there are 4 residential days that you have to attend as part of the pathway training. I've just done my first 2 residential days, and to be honest with you, they were absolutely fantastic. It was such a good opportunity to network with other pharmacists who are in this similar job, because as we all know, it can be quite isolating going from community to primary care. I would say another good thing about the residential days is that you get guest speakers who come and talk to you about how they approach the work in primary care, and also you have the tutors who sort of deliver the 2 days, and it's just great just to feel sort of part of something, you know, you're all together, and it's nice just not to feel isolated. So another thing to mention about the pathway is that the government is really putting their weight behind it. So each place costs £5,000 per head, which is obviously the government's paying through the PCN network, and it's just to say, you know, it really it's something substantial. It's not sort of a Mickey Mouse course. So I found that quite interesting, you know, the funds that the government are putting behind it. So one of the take-home things that I realised after I came back from the residential is that it feels to me that pharmacy is undergoing a massive generational shift, just like much of the NHS. So this sort of move from community pharmacy into primary care and the subsequent training that we do, I feel it is one of the biggest upskilling of the profession in a generation. It really is huge going from community to primary care, and the sort of skills that we're learning to help us succeed in this role is massive. It's huge. I think one downside of the course is that you don't get any formal qualification as such. You just get a certificate, which I think is a bit of a shame. I think it'd be nice to get some sort of qualifications or post-nominals just to show that you've been through it and that you've been trained up to the required grade that is needed for primary care pharmacy. So I'm going to reserve my full conclusion until I actually complete the course, but so far, you know what, I have found it useful. I think I'd probably be lost without it. Could it do with trimming down a little bit? Yes, I think it could do with trimming down a little bit, especially I think that applies to those people who don't get a dedicated training day every week in their primary care network. I think potentially it can be a bit of a struggle, but then again, I think when you apply to this job, you sort of know what you're getting yourself in for, and it is only for 18 months, it's not forever, so there is pros and cons. Yeah, so that was just a quick little chat about the primary care pathway. I'll probably do another video halfway through to give my thoughts and feelings, but you know, so far so good. Like I say, it is only 18 months. I do know a lot of people sort of get a bit negative about the course because they do feel it's quite a bit of work. I'd say yes and no. I mean, I probably am a bit biased because I do get a bit of free time to be able to do it, but I will obviously reserve my full conclusion towards the end of the course. But yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you so much. Goodbye.